While we wait for a new government to be formed, the world keeps on turning, and that was underlined at the Pacific Islands Forum in Rarotonga this week. Usually our Prime Minister would attend, but given that we are between governments, it was up to outgoing Deputy PM Carmel Sepuloni and Nationals Gerry Brownlee to represent us there instead. And Gerry joins us now from Parliament, where he's probably only had a few hours sleep since arriving back. Good morning, Gerry.
Good morning, Rebecca.
Well, listen, geopolitics, have been heating up down there in the Pacific, with both China and the US competing to be the major strategic partner to nations there. What is the incoming government's view on that tussle?
Well, can I say, firstly, that Pacific Island Forum this year was the biggest it's ever been held, very well run by the Cook Islands. There were the 18 countries who make up the Pacific Forum represented, along with 15 other countries from the dialogue partners, and then a group of another 7 who would like to become a dialogue partner, and then all of the sort of associated NGOs who turn up to these things as well. So around about 700 delegates in what was a very, very good few days of discussion and focus entirely on the Pacific. So well done to the Cook Islands. I think as far as our priorities are concerned, they do line up very much with the Blue Pacific strategy, which is the cornerstone of the work going forward for the forum. And there are 12 action points, and they're all focused on the well-being of people, their prosperity, their movement, the issue of climate change and the effects it's having on some Pacific economies and populations, and a number of other things that are just essentially about the Pacific speaking as a united voice on issues that affect all of those countries.
But coming back to that question, though, I suppose, which is something that looms over the region at the moment, is that sort of strategic competition going on down in the Pacific with China's influence on the rise. We've seen the US come back into the region. Many people felt that it neglected the Pacific for quite a while, but we are seeing that heat up. And I wonder what the incoming government's view is on that situation, where we sit.
Look, we don't have any particular deep and immediate concern. Firstly, I think if you look at the history of the last 18 months, where certainly the Chinese Foreign Minister turned up, he made a number of very enticing offers to Pacific nations. They weren't taken up in any great number. And then you had the US saying, well, actually, we probably could do a bit more in the Pacific. We need to, follow up from some of the rhetoric of the past few years. And you see now 2 summits in Washington with Pacific leaders and President Biden, the commitment for a significant amount of funding. But more importantly, the reaffirming of the long-term relationships that have existed between all of the Forum countries and the United States. And I spoke at length with Linda, her name's just gone straight out of my head, Thomas Greenfield, the US ambassador to the UN. She sits at cabinet level in the United States system. And was very, very keen to hear what more the United States can do to help. So, you look at it too that of those 15 other countries that turned up, all of them came along with offers of assistance in some sort of way. You collect all that up, and it's a very large sum of money. So, the Pacific has a degree of opportunity here that I think does need to be captured, and I'm sure that whoever is sitting in the Foreign Ministry in New Zealand in the months and years ahead will be able to be part of ensuring that big amount of funding is spent to the betterment of the most Pacific Islanders possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Our partners, I suppose, our traditional partners anyway, the US, the UK, Australia, do have some concerns about, I suppose, China's rise down there in the Pacific. Australia seems to be really the linchpin to the US effort to counter China, and in particular its military partnerships. It could play an important role in any future conflict, and I know that that is not imminent, but it is something that our partners are thinking about. So how do we walk that line, given these are our traditional regional and security partners, but we have a really important relationship, obviously, with China as well?
We do, but can I just take you to one of the initiatives that came out of this forum is the suggestion, recommendation, motion, if you like, from Fiji, from Prime Minister Rambuka, that the Pacific Forum embrace the concept of a peaceful Pacific. And that's their immediate response to some of the suggestions that it could become a conflict zone. I don't see that being something that's going to happen anytime soon. I think there are always concerns about geostrategic shifts and who has the greatest influence in any particular place. But in the end, I think recognising the individual cultures of each of the Pacific Island nations is very much also these days reflected in their embracing of the Westminster system, freedom, democracy and everything else. And I note too that the Australian Prime Minister, having visited the United States, immediately visited President Xi in China. We were able to have about 25 minutes with Mr Albanese at the forum, and I think the tension that might have been there can be managed, if you like, and I think the recognition too that China has been a significant Pacific donor for at least 30 years. So there's nothing particularly new in all of this.
Yeah, and listening to that, it sounds like perhaps, you know, that the counter-offensive, I suppose, by the US, or its re-engagement with the Pacific and the region down here is having some success.
Well, I think, you know, the indications from the ambassador who we spent some time with was that they want to listen to what the Pacific needs. And I think that's a very important thing, and it's one of the successes of the forum in most recent times. Remembering it's been around since 1971, so this is the 52nd forum meeting. But the fact that, you know, that we've certainly moved from the days where big countries, UK, United States, New Zealand and Australia were calling the shots in the Pacific. The Pacific nations are finding a strong voice in that PIF, and we certainly support them in that.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch on something there as well, is that, you know, amid all of this jostling, I suppose, for influence or for strategic reasons within the region, has New Zealand lost its voice a little bit? I mean, we must have had a diminished presence at this summit purely because we did not have a Prime Minister there. But overall, has our voice been diminished by this jostling in the region or not?
I don't think so. So because we had this dual arrangement, Carmel Sepuloni went to the leaders' retreat on Aitataki as is appropriate, and I was able to stay back on Rarotonga and engage in a number of bilateral meetings. And it's very clear from those bilateral discussions that a lot of people, in fact all of them, saw New Zealand as being a pivotal partner in whatever they might like to establish as a relationship with Pacific nations. And I think it's our strong view that Pacific nations should be respected for their individual sovereignty that is helpful in enabling others to engage with Pacific governments.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke to Carmel Sepuloni on these issues earlier this year, and she was talking back then about our strategy in the Pacific being sort of at 3 or 4 years. And I just wondered whether that's a mistake, I suppose, given, should we be thinking further ahead than that, given the challenges the region is facing, and also things like climate change, obviously, which is huge for these nations?
Look, I think if you're talking about an overall strategy for the Pacific, then you're requiring those 18 nations all to agree to every bit of it. And I think the Blue Pacific strategy that's been part of this PIF discussions with its 12 action points and the ability for countries to participate at one level or another is a much better way to ensure that something is done rather than just the assembling of a document that gets tossed in the corner and becomes eventually a dust trap. And I think the number of years that you might put on it are also somewhat exponential because the PIF meets annually, and throughout the year there are many subgroups of bureaucrats from all of the PIF nations and increasingly the dialogue nations who are discussing all aspects of it. So that any strategy is a living document and will change. The 4-year horizon is not necessarily a limitation.
Jerry, you said earlier that, this is about listening. So I wonder what message you bring back to the incoming Prime Minister, for example, from the Pacific Islands Forum.
Well, the first thing would be that New Zealand is well regarded, that the way in which we have approached, particularly in the last probably 15 years, the aid program, which New Zealand spends a lot of money in the Pacific, being focused on actual outcomes, but also on infrastructure and the ability of islands to be able to make their own choices about that, is very much appreciated. It's also, I think, very much appreciated from the Pacific leaders I spoke to, that we can be quite a conduit for them. And remember, some of these populations are very, very small. The overall area of the Pacific is absolutely massive, about a third of the world's sea space, and the area of responsibility for high seas, etc., territorial seas, is quite vast. And so having a friendly country like New Zealand who can be on their side is very much a valued thing by Pacific leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to switch tacks just a little bit here, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but APEC is taking place next week, and that is going to be another important, global meeting actually, but there'll be a meeting there between President Xi and Biden, we found out this morning. If a government isn't formed in time, could you be off there too, Jerry?
Look, there are contingencies being discussed as we speak. I'm not going to speculate about what the end discussion may be. APEC is an important meeting. New Zealand is, as we all know, a trading nation that enjoys a lifestyle here well in advance of what a domestic economy alone would give us. And so it's important that we're at the table. We will have a presence at the table. Just exactly what that presence is, whether it's political representation or people from our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is yet to be fully determined.
And just finally, you would have heard this in the intro, but would you like to be the Foreign Minister? I sense a relish for the job from you, and you have been the Foreign Minister before in the previous national government.
I was anticipating you asking that right up front, actually. So you've shown remarkable restraint, and I think
I'm famous for it.
All I'll say to you is that the media fascination with who, what, and when should recognise that there are constructive talks going on, and it's important that we form a stable government that gets on with the job. Decisions about who does what inside that government will be for the Prime Minister and the leaders of the coalition, and I don't speculate at all about any particular position that anyone might have, including me.
It's not a no, though, is it, Jerry? Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we look forward.
No, hang on. Well, look, you ask these questions as like they're catch-22. They're probably about catch-88, really. There's all sorts of ways around them, but I think I've answered the way I should. I don't get to make that choice. That's made by other people, and I will do whatever I'm asked to. And if it's sit on the back bench, I'll do it, because I think New Zealand does need a change of government, a different direction, and I know this coalition arrangement, when it comes together, will achieve that.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully not long for us all to wait now. We'll be able to find out exactly how it looks. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us here on The Nation this morning.